The package felt heavier than it should. Lady Rosalind Fairmont turned it over in her hands, frowning at the unfamiliar seal pressed into dark wax. Her brother's letters never looked like this. Crisp, formal, weighted with something more than paper and ink. She'd been so eager when the clerk handed it to her, so certain after waiting by the window all morning that this was finally the novel Edmund had promised to send from London. She should have noticed the difference immediately. But she'd been distracted by the mortifying encounter at the postal office, by the Duke of Blackwell's infuriating presumption that she had no business collecting her own correspondence. "Do you make a habit of running errands your servants should handle?" he'd asked, looking at her as though she were a child playing dress-up in adult society. She'd barely resisted the urge to tell him exactly where he could direct his opinions. Now, alone in her bedchamber with afternoon light slanting through the windows, Rosalind broke the seal. The letter fell out first, thick paper, expensive, covered in a sprawling hand that was decidedly not Edmund's careful script. She unfolded it, scanning the opening line. "My dearest brother." Her stomach dropped. She should stop reading, should fold it immediately, reseal it somehow, pretend this never happened. But her eyes had already caught the next line, and the next, and suddenly she couldn't look away. "I hope this letter finds you well, though I confess I worry about you more with each passing year. The weight of maintaining our secret grows heavier, doesn't it? Sometimes I think about what would happen if society knew the truth, that I exist, that Mother's past is not what everyone believes. But then I remember why we keep this silence. Not out of shame, brother, but out of love for her memory. And perhaps a bit of practicality. Your position would not survive the scandal of an elder bastard brother living across the sea. I've enclosed the book you requested. I think you'll find the philosophy within it challenging, as you enjoy. I hope we might discuss it when we see each other again, perhaps in the autumn. It's been nearly 3 years since your last visit. I miss you, Gabriel. Your brother always." Thomas Rosalind read it 3 times, her heart pounding harder with each pass. The Duke of Blackwell had a brother, an older brother, illegitimate, hidden away overseas, a secret so dangerous that its exposure would destroy everything, his title, his standing, his entire life built on the assumption that he was his father's only son and rightful heir, and she'd just read about it by complete accident. "Oh God," she whispered to the empty room. The book sat innocently beside the letter, a leather-bound volume on moral philosophy, inscribed with a message she couldn't bring herself to read. This was private, intimate, the kind of correspondence between 2 people who clearly loved each other despite the circumstances that kept them apart. She thought of the Duke's face at the postal office, all aristocratic coldness and barely concealed disdain. She'd found him insufferable, with his presumptions and his judgment. But this letter painted a different picture entirely. One of a man carrying an impossible secret, protecting someone he cared for, living under constant threat of exposure. Rosalind carefully refolded the letter, her hands trembling slightly. What was she supposed to do now? Return it with an apology? Pretend she'd never opened it? The Duke would know. He'd see it in her face, in the way she couldn't meet his eyes. Men like him were trained to detect weakness, to spot lies. And Rosalind had never been particularly good at deception. She could use this information. The thought crept in, unbidden, uncomfortable. She could leverage it, trade it for something, protect herself with it. Isn't that what people did with dangerous secrets? But even as the idea formed, she rejected it. She'd been manipulated and underestimated by men her entire adult life, made to feel foolish, used as entertainment, dismissed as inconsequential. She refused to become what she despised. The real question was, would the Duke believe that? 2 days later, the invitation arrived. Rosalind was in the drawing room with her mother when their butler presented the heavy cream envelope on a silver tray. Lady Fairmont opened it with practiced elegance, her eyes scanning the contents before widening slightly. "How extraordinary," she murmured. "The Duke of Blackwell is hosting a house party at Ashford Manor. 2 weeks, beginning this Friday. He's invited several families. Apparently his cousin has returned from abroad and he wishes to properly introduce him to society." Rosalind's blood turned cold. "A house party?" Her father looked up from his newspaper. Blackwell's never been one for extended social gatherings, Must be important if he's opening his home like this. It's quite the honor, her mother continued, already mentally cataloguing which gowns would need pressing. The Duke rarely entertains on this scale. And to include us specifically, she smiled at Rosalind. Perhaps he noticed you at Lady Pemberton's ball last month, dear. Rosalind forced herself to breathe normally. I sincerely doubt the Duke of Blackwell noticed me at all, Mother. But she knew better. This wasn't about his cousin, this was about her, about the package sitting in her wardrobe, still sealed, still damning. He was hunting for his secret, and she was the prey. The journey to Ashford Manor took 4 hours through increasingly beautiful countryside. Rosalind barely noticed the scenery, her mind spinning through increasingly desperate scenarios. She'd considered every option over the past 2 days: confession, denial, deflection. None felt adequate. The package sat in her trunk, carefully wrapped. She decided to return it immediately, unopened as far as he would know. It was her only play. Ashford Manor rose from the landscape like something from a Gothic novel, all stone and history, surrounded by perfectly manicured grounds that spoke of centuries of wealth. Rosalind's stomach twisted as their carriage rolled up the circular drive. The Duke stood at the entrance with 2 other gentlemen, greeting guests with the kind of practiced charm that came from years of social obligation. He looked every inch the powerful aristocrat in dark blue superfine, his bearing radiating casual authority. Their eyes met as Rosalind descended from the carriage, and she saw the flash of calculation in his gaze. He knew, or at least, he suspected. "Lord and Lady Fairmont," he said smoothly, bowing. "Lady Rosalind, welcome to Ashford Manor. I trust your journey was pleasant." "Very pleasant, Your Grace," her mother replied, clearly delighted by the attention. "Your home is magnificent." "You're too kind." His attention slid to Rosalind. "Lady Rosalind, I don't believe we were properly introduced at Lady Pemberton's ball." "We weren't introduced at all, Your Grace." She kept her voice light, her expression neutral. "Though we did meet rather memorably at the postal office earlier this week." Something flickered in his eyes, surprised that she'd mention it perhaps. "Ah, yes. I hope you found your package satisfactory." The question landed like a blade between her ribs. "Quite satisfactory," Rosalind replied evenly, "though I confess I've not yet had time to properly examine its contents." "How unfortunate." His smile didn't reach his eyes. "I do hope you'll find time during your stay. First impressions are so important, don't you think?" "Indeed, though I've found that first impressions are often misleading, Your Grace. Sometimes packages contain exactly what we expect. Other times—" She held his gaze. "They surprise us entirely." The air between them crackled with subtext her parents couldn't possibly understand. "Then I look forward to hearing your final assessment," the Duke said quietly. "Perhaps we might find time for a private conversation during your visit." "I would appreciate that opportunity." "Excellent." He turned back to her parents, his charm restored. "Please, allow the staff to show you to your rooms. Dinner is at 8. I've arranged for some entertainment this evening. My cousin is quite the accomplished pianist." As they were led inside, Rosalind felt the Duke's attention follow her like a weight. She had perhaps hours before he demanded answers, hours to decide whether honesty or deception would serve her better, hours to pretend her heart wasn't pounding at the memory of his green eyes fixed on hers, searching for truth in a conversation built entirely of lies. The guest rooms were beautiful, all silk and velvet and carefully curated comfort. Rosalind's overlooked the East Gardens, peaceful and perfect. Under different circumstances, she might have enjoyed this. Instead, she retrieved the package from her trunk and held it, feeling its weight again. A knock at her door made her jump. "Come in," she called, hastily tucking the package behind a cushion. But it wasn't her mother or a maid. It was a footman carrying a small silver tray with a folded note. "From His Grace, my lady. He requests you join him in his study at your earliest convenience." Rosalind took the note with fingers that wanted to tremble. The message was brief, written in strong, decisive handwriting. "Lady Rosalind, I believe we have matters to discuss. My study is on the 2nd floor, East Wing. Come now, or I'll be forced to call on you in your chambers, which would be far less discreet. B." She crumpled the note slowly. So much for hours to prepare. The study was exactly what she expected. Walls of books, dark wood furniture, the scent of leather and tobacco. The Duke stood by the window, still in his formal attire, his posture rigid. He turned as she entered, and the door clicked shut behind her with terrible finality. "You opened it," he said without preamble. "Don't insult me by denying it." Rosalind lifted her chin. "You're correct. I did." She watched surprise cross his features. Clearly he'd expected her to lie, to deflect, to play games. Instead, she'd thrown him off balance with honesty. "I see." He studied her with renewed intensity. "Then we have a problem." "Do we?" She moved further into the room, refusing to show weakness. "Or do you simply assume we have one? You read private correspondence. You know something that could—" He stopped, jaw tight. "You know what you know." "I know you have a brother named Thomas who lives overseas," Rosalind said quietly. "I know he's older than you. I know your mother had him before her marriage. I know you love him, and he loves you, and you've built an entire system of lies to protect each other." The Duke went very still. "And what do you intend to do with this information?" "Nothing." "Nothing," he repeated flatly. "Forgive me if I find that difficult to believe." Anger flared hot and sudden in her chest. "Because I'm a woman? Because you assume I'm either too stupid to understand the value of what I know, or too scheming not to use it?" "Because you're human," he shot back, "and humans are predictable. They see advantage, and they take it." "Then you don't know me at all, Your Grace." She pulled the package from her reticule where she'd tucked it before leaving her room. "Here, take it. I haven't opened it again since that first mistake. The letter is inside exactly as it was." He stared at the package as though it might explode. "Why?" The single word carried the weight of genuine confusion. "Because it's not mine. Because you clearly went to great lengths to keep this secret safe, and I have no desire to be the person who destroys that. Because—" She hesitated, then pushed forward. "Because I've spent my entire adult life being underestimated and manipulated by men who thought they could use me for their amusement. I refuse to become what I hate." The Duke took the package slowly, his fingers brushing hers for one electric moment. "You expect me to believe you're simply being altruistic? I expect you to believe whatever you need to believe to feel safe, Your Grace. But I'm telling you the truth. I want nothing from you. I simply want to forget this ever happened. And yet you'll carry this knowledge for the rest of your life." He set the package on his desk without opening it. "How do I trust that you won't use it later, when you need something, when someone offers you the right price?" The accusation stung more than it should. "You don't," Rosalind said coldly. "You don't trust me, because trust requires assuming the best of someone rather than the worst. And men like you don't do that with women like me. Women like you? Women who dare to think, to act independently, to refuse to stay in their assigned boxes." She turned toward the door. "Forgive me for intruding on your study, Your Grace. I'll keep out of your way for the remainder of this charade house party." "Wait." She paused, hand on the doorknob. "You're right," he said quietly. "I did assume the worst. In my defense, the consequences of being wrong are catastrophic. Yes, I understand." She glanced back at him. "But you invited my entire family here to investigate whether I'd betrayed your trust. You've already judged me guilty, Your Grace. Nothing I say now will convince you otherwise." "Then prove it." Rosalind turned fully. "I'm sorry. Stay for the house party. Act normally. Prove you're not waiting for the right moment to leverage what you know." His green eyes held hers with uncomfortable intensity. "If you leave now, I'll always wonder, always worry, but if you stay, if you conduct yourself with the same discretion you've shown so far, perhaps I'll learn to trust your word." "You're asking me to audition for your trust?" "I'm asking you to give me time to believe you." He moved closer and she caught the faint scent of sandalwood and something darker, more complex. 2 weeks. That's all. Show me I'm wrong about you." Rosalind should have refused, should have walked out and demanded her family leave immediately. But something in his expression, vulnerability, barely masked, made her pause. He was genuinely afraid. Not of her specifically, but of what exposure would mean. For himself, yes, but more importantly for this brother he clearly loved. "Fine," she heard herself say. 2 weeks. But after that, Your Grace, I expect you to leave me alone entirely. No more suspicion, no more testing. We go back to being complete strangers." "Agreed." She nodded once and left before she could change her mind. Behind her, she heard him exhale, a long, shaky breath that sounded almost like relief. The first few days of the house party passed in a blur of forced pleasantries and careful avoidance. Rosalind played her part perfectly, charming to other guests, polite to her hosts, and scrupulously proper in all her interactions. She and the Duke barely spoke beyond necessary courtesies, but she felt his attention constantly, a weight between her shoulder blades whenever they occupied the same room. He was watching, analyzing, waiting for her to slip. It should have made her angry. Instead, it made her reckless. On the fourth evening, during a tedious dinner where a pompous baronet droned on about his hunting achievements, Rosalind caught the Duke's eye across the table and deliberately raised one eyebrow, a tiny, subtle expression that said, "Can you believe this fool?" Something shifted in his face, not quite a smile, but close, a recognition of shared suffering. When the men retired for port afterward, she found herself laughing with the other ladies about nothing in particular, feeling lighter than she had in days. Until Lady Cordelia Ashworth leaned close and murmured, "You're wasting your time, you know." Rosalind turned. "I beg your pardon?" "With the Duke." Lady Cordelia's smile was all edges. "Half the unmarried women here are hoping to catch his attention, but chasing a title so obviously is rather common, don't you think?" Several other women had gone quiet, listening. "I'm not chasing anything," Rosalind said evenly. "I'm simply attending a house party my family was invited to." "Of course." Lady Cordelia's tone suggested she believed nothing of the sort. "Though you do seem to spend a great deal of time catching his eye. One might think you had some sort of understanding with him." The insinuation was clear, and from the expressions around her, the seed had been planted. Lady Rosalind Fairmont was a fortune hunter, a title chaser. Common. She excused herself before she could say something unforgivable. The next morning she heard the whispers during breakfast, saw the knowing glances, felt the shift in how other guests regarded her, with pity or contempt depending on their disposition. The Duke appeared just as she was ready to retreat to her room for the day. "Lady Rosalind, a word?" She followed him into the library, jaw clenched so hard her teeth ached. "I heard the rumor," he said without preamble, "about your supposed pursuit of my title. How wonderful for you." "It's not wonderful, it's—" He stopped, clearly searching for words. "It's unjust. You're here because I essentially forced you to be. You should not suffer socially for that. And yet I am." Rosalind laughed bitterly. "Funny how that works, isn't it? You suspect me of scheming, and somehow I'm the one who ends up publicly humiliated." They stared at each other in tense silence. Then Rosalind felt something crack open inside her. Frustration, anger, exhaustion from days of being tested and judged. "Fine," she said sharply. "You want to know the truth?" "Yes. I read your letter. Yes, I know about Thomas. Yes, I could destroy you with a single conversation if I wanted to. And my honor is now being attacked because of this entire situation, because you dragged me here to test me, because I'm trying to prove I'm trustworthy to someone who will probably never believe it anyway." The Duke went very pale. "Lady Rosalind, what do you want from me?" The words burst out louder than intended. "What will it take for you to believe I'm not your enemy? Because apparently discretion isn't enough. Apparently returning your property isn't enough. Apparently enduring public humiliation to maintain your precious secret still isn't enough." Silence fell like a hammer. "What do you want?" he asked quietly. "In exchange for your continued silence?" The question hung between them, loaded with meaning. Rosalind could ask for anything: money, property, introduction to better social circles, marriage prospects, anything. "I wanted nothing," she said, voice tight. "But now I want you to stop these rumors. Make them go away. You have power, influence, use it. If my reputation is going to be destroyed because of your paranoia, the least you can do is protect me from the consequences." The Duke studied her for a long moment. Then, unexpectedly, he laughed, short and sharp and entirely humorless. "You're right, this is my fault. and I have a solution, though you won't like it. I don't like anything about this situation, Your Grace. Then one more uncomfortable arrangement won't matter. He turned to face her fully, his expression calculating. We court, publicly, genuinely, as far as anyone else knows. Rosalind stared. Absolutely not. Think about it. If I'm actively courting you, if it's clear the interest originates from me, then the rumors stop. You're not chasing a title if the Duke is pursuing you. Your honor remains intact, and my secret stays protected because you're invested in maintaining the fiction. That's insane. That's practical. He moved closer, his voice dropping. 2 weeks, Lady Rosalind, the same time frame we already agreed to. At the end, you end the courtship publicly. Tell everyone you realized we wouldn't suit. Your reputation stays intact. A woman who caught a duke's attention but had the independence to walk away is interesting, not desperate. And I'll have had time to determine if I can truly trust you. Every instinct told her to refuse, but as much as she hated to admit it, his logic was sound. A fake courtship would solve both their problems, her reputation, his security. And at the end I end it, she repeated. Not you. I want that control, Your Grace. I won't be publicly rejected by you. Agreed. You end it however you choose. And afterwards we never speak again. If that's what you want. Rosalind looked at him, really looked at him. Saw not the arrogant Duke from the postal office, but a man trapped by circumstances of birth, protecting someone he loved at enormous personal cost. Saw someone who'd been taught to trust no one, and who'd been proven right enough times to make that instinct rational. Saw someone who irritated her immensely, but who was perhaps not entirely terrible. Fine, she said. We have an agreement. But let's be clear, Your Grace. I find you insufferable, you find me threatening, and we're both counting the days until this charade ends. Perfectly clear, he offered his hand. Shall we seal our bargain? She took his hand, feeling calluses she hadn't expected. Let's get this over with. His grip tightened briefly. It starts now, this afternoon. Be ready to look appropriately charmed by my company. I'm not that talented an actress. Try anyway. And with that, they'd committed to 2 weeks of pretending to feel something neither of them wanted. Rosalind told herself it would be simple, mechanical, a performance with clear parameters and a definite end. She had no idea how wrong she was. The first public performance of their courtship happened at tea that afternoon. The Duke arrived in the drawing room where the ladies had gathered, which was unusual enough to draw immediate attention. Men typically didn't appear for afternoon tea unless specifically invited. Lady Rosalind, he said, his voice carrying across the room, I wondered if you might join me for a walk through the rose garden. I've been told it's particularly beautiful this time of year, and I find myself in need of pleasant company. Every woman in the room went silent. Rosalind set down her teacup with practiced grace, ignoring the burning feeling of a dozen pairs of eyes on her. That sounds lovely, Your Grace. She stood, accepting his offered arm, hyper-aware of the whispers erupting the moment they left. Well, the Duke murmured as they walked down the corridor. That was subtle. You wanted everyone to notice. Mission accomplished. Rosalind kept her voice light, her smile fixed. Half those women are already planning my murder. The other half are planning their own courtship campaigns. You've elevated yourself from fortune hunter to genuine competition. How wonderful for me. They emerged into the gardens, and Rosalind had to admit they truly were beautiful. Roses in full bloom, paths winding between carefully tended beds, the afternoon sun turning everything golden. Under different circumstances, this might have been romantic. We should establish rules, the Duke said once they were out of earshot of the house. Beyond the obvious agreement to be civil? Precisely. He guided her down a path lined with white roses. Physical contact will be necessary to sell the performance. Nothing inappropriate, but hand-holding, my arm around your waist during dances, standing closer than strictly proper. Fine. And we should spend time together daily. Walks, conversations, perhaps riding if you're comfortable on horseback. I'm an excellent rider, Your Grace. Good. Then tomorrow morning, we'll ride together. He glanced at her. You'll need to appear interested in what I say. Laugh at my attempts at humor. Look at me as though you find me compelling. I'm not sure I can manage that last part. His mouth twitched. Try imagining I'm someone else. Helpful? But something about the dry delivery made her want to smile despite herself. What about you? You'll need to appear equally enamored. I'm very skilled at pretending, Lady Rosalind. Lucky for both of us. They walked in silence for a moment, the only sounds birdsong and gravel crunching beneath their feet. I didn't mean for any of this to happen, Rosalind said suddenly. The package mix-up, reading your letter, none of it. I know. She looked at him sharply. You do? I've spent 4 days watching you. You're uncomfortable with deception. Every time you've had to maintain this fiction, I've seen how much it costs you. He paused. That's not the behavior of a practiced manipulator. Then why not simply believe me and end this arrangement? Because wanting to trust someone and actually trusting them are different things. His expression remained neutral, but his voice carried an edge of something raw. I've learned that lesson too many times. Rosalind understood that more than she wanted to admit. So we're two people who don't trust easily, pretending to court while actively disliking each other, she summarized. This should be perfectly simple. Perfectly. But as they continued walking, his arm a warm weight beneath her hand, Rosalind felt the first whisper of doubt. Maybe this wouldn't be as simple as she'd assumed. That evening at dinner, they sat together by careful arrangement. The Duke played his part flawlessly, attentive without being overbearing, finding excuses to lean close, laughing at her observations about their fellow guests. Rosalind found herself responding more naturally than expected. He was unexpectedly witty when he chose to be, his dry humour cutting through the evening's tedium like a blade. Lord Hartwick is going to propose a toast, he murmured, as the courses progressed. Prepare yourself for approximately 7 minutes of self-congratulation disguised as humility. Only 7? He's getting more efficient. He practiced on me earlier. I timed it. She bit her lip to keep from laughing. You're terrible. I'm honest. His eyes met hers and something shifted, a moment of genuine connection that neither of them had intended. Rosalind looked away first, her pulse unsteady. After dinner, as predicted, Lord Hartwick made his toast. The Duke caught her eye exactly once during the speech, raising one eyebrow in an expression so perfectly resigned that she had to fake a coughing fit to cover her laugh. Lady Cordelia noticed. Rosalind saw the calculation in her eyes, the way she tracked every interaction between them. Good. Let her see the Duke's interest. Let everyone see it. This was the plan. Later, as guests mingled in the music room, the Duke's cousin, a charming young man named Julian, played piano while others talked and drank wine. The Duke appeared at Rosalind's elbow. Dance with me. It wasn't a question. She let him lead her to the space cleared for dancing, hyper-aware of how many people watched them. His hand settled at her waist as they moved through a waltz, proper but intimate. You're doing well, he said quietly. Very convincing. So are you. She followed his lead, their bodies finding rhythm easily. Anyone watching would think you actually enjoy my company. Perhaps I don't find it as unbearable as expected. What a charming compliment, Your Grace. I've never claimed to be charming. That much is obvious. His hand tightened briefly at her waist. Not painful, just present. A reminder of contact. Careful, Lady Rosalind. Someone might overhear your sharp tongue and think we're arguing. Then kiss me to prove them wrong. The words escaped before she could stop them. Pure provocation, a test to see if she could rattle him. His eyes darkened. Don't tempt me to do things that would scandalize your mother. I didn't realize you cared about propriety. I care about not compromising you beyond repair. But his thumb moved slightly against her waist, a gesture so small she might have imagined it. This is a performance, remember. Let's not blur those lines. Of course, heaven forbid we blur lines. But something had shifted between them, a charge in the air, an awareness of proximity. When the dance ended, he held her hand a moment longer than necessary before releasing it. Rosalind told herself it meant nothing. She was a very poor liar. The next morning she woke to find a note slipped under her door. Stables, 7 o'clock. Wear something practical. B. She should have stayed in bed out of spite. Instead, She dressed in her riding habit and made her way to the stables as dawn broke over the estate. The Duke was already there, standing beside two horses, a large grey stallion and a smaller chestnut mare. He looked different in riding clothes, less formal and somehow younger. "I wasn't sure you'd come," he admitted. "I keep my word, Your Grace, even when I don't particularly want to. A trait we share." He helped her mount, his hands steady at her waist. "There's a path through the woods that opens to the north fields. Quite beautiful, if you're interested. Lead the way." They rode in companionable silence at first, the morning cool and fresh, mist still clinging to the ground. Rosalind had forgotten how much she enjoyed this. The freedom of movement, the partnership between rider and horse, the world reduced to immediate sensations. "You are good," the Duke observed as they navigated a narrow trail. "I half expected you to be exaggerating your skill." "Why? Because women often exaggerate their abilities to impress men?" She guided her mare around a low branch. "I learned to ride before I learned to dance, Your Grace. Some of us prefer activities that don't require pretending to enjoy tedious conversation. Present conversation excluded, I assume." "The jury is still out." He laughed. Actually laughed, the sound surprising them both. They emerged into open fields and, without discussion, urged their horses into a gallop. Wind whipped past, cold and exhilarating, and for several perfect minutes, Rosalind forgot about secrets and bargains and complicated truths. When they finally slowed, both breathless, she turned to find him watching her with an expression she couldn't quite read. "What?" she demanded. "Nothing. Just, you look different when you're not thinking about how much you dislike me. Who says I'm not thinking about it right now? Your face, you're terrible at hiding genuine emotion." Rosalind had no response to that. They walked the horses back slowly, letting them cool down. The Duke seemed more relaxed than she'd ever seen him. His usual rigid control softened somehow. "Tell me about the ex-pretender," he said abruptly. "The one who underestimated you." She stiffened. "Why?" "Because you mentioned him the other day, and I've been curious." He glanced at her. "You don't have to answer, but we're pretending to court. Shouldn't we know something real about each other?" It was a fair point. "His name was Lord Edward Thornbury," Rosalind said after a moment. "Charming, clever, everything a young woman might want. He paid me attention for 3 months. I thought—" She stopped, the memory still sharp. "I thought he saw me as an equal, someone worth his time. But he didn't. No. I discovered by accident that he'd made a bet with his friends. He wanted to see if he could seduce the Earl's bookish daughter, the one everyone said was too opinionated for marriage. When I confronted him, he laughed and said, 'I should be flattered anyone bothered to notice me at all.'" The Duke's jaw tightened. "What happened then?" "I threw wine in his face at Lady Morrison's ball and told him exactly what I thought of him and his friends, in detail publicly." She smiled without humor. "I've had a reputation for being difficult ever since." "Difficult," he repeated, "or unwilling to tolerate being treated as less than you are. The tongue doesn't distinguish between the two." They rode in silence for a moment. "I understand why you don't trust easily," the Duke said finally, "why you assumed the worst when I suspected you." "And I understand why you suspect everyone." Rosalind looked at him. "We're both casualties of different battles, Your Grace. That doesn't make us allies." "No, but it makes us less adversarial, perhaps." Perhaps. By the time they returned to the stables, other guests were beginning to stir. They'd been gone over an hour, completely unchaperoned, perfect for the fiction they were building. But as the Duke helped her dismount, his hands lingering at her waist just slightly longer than necessary, Rosalind wondered if they were building a fiction at all, or stumbling into something far more dangerous. The days began to blur into a pattern. Morning rides where they actually talked, about books, about politics, about philosophy and art, and the thousand things that occupied their thoughts. Afternoon appearances together, maintaining the performance for their audience. Evening dances and conversations, playing their parts so well that Rosalind sometimes forgot they were acting. She learned things about him, that he'd wanted to study architecture before inheriting his title, that he hated formal dinners almost as much as she did, that he played chess viciously and without mercy, and that beating him required every bit of strategy she possessed. "You're improving," he said during their third game, studying the board with narrowed eyes. "Last time I beat you in 12 moves. Last time I was being polite." She captured his bishop. "Check." He countered immediately. "Politeness is overrated," says the man who built his entire life around proper behavior. "Not my entire life." He moved his queen. "Some parts are specifically designed to avoid proper behavior, such as sneaking his brother into England under cover stories every few years, such as maintaining correspondence through coded messages and dead drops, such as—" He stopped, seeming to realize he'd revealed more than intended. Rosalind studied him across the chessboard. "You miss him, Thomas, every day. When did you see him last?" 2 years ago. He came for 3 months, pretending to be a distant cousin visiting from the continent. We hunted, we talked, we pretended everything was normal. The Duke's expression was distant. Then he left, and I went back to being alone with a secret too dangerous to share. "You're not alone now," Rosalind said softly. "I know, and I'll keep knowing, Your Grace, whether you trust me or not." He looked at her then, really looked at her, as though seeing someone he hadn't expected. "Why do you protect me?" he asked. "You gain nothing, you risk your reputation being here. Why?" "Because secrets aren't weapons," she echoed his brother's words back to him. "They're pieces of someone, and I won't be the person who uses someone's vulnerability against them, even if that person is you." The chessboard sat forgotten between them. "I'm beginning to think," the Duke said slowly, "that I was entirely wrong about you, Lady Rosalind." "Beginning? How generous." But the humor felt thinner now, covering something neither of them wanted to name. That evening, Lady Cordelia approached Rosalind in the library. "You've done well," she said without preamble. Catching the Duke's attention, "I'm almost impressed." Rosalind closed her book. "I'm not interested in whatever game you're playing, Lady Cordelia." "Game? I'm merely observing." She smiled, all teeth and calculation. "You and His Grace seem quite intimate lately. Riding unchaperoned, spending hours in each other's company. One wonders what you talk about during all that time." "The weather, horses, terribly boring stuff." Boring enough that he looks at you as though you're the most fascinating woman in England." Lady Cordelia examined her fingernails, curious how a duke could become so enamored so quickly, almost as though there's some other factor at play. A cold finger of warning traced Rosalind's spine. "I'm sure I don't know what you mean." "Of course not." But Lady Cordelia's eyes were sharp, calculating. "Just be careful, Lady Rosalind. Secrets have a way of surfacing at the most inconvenient times." She left before Rosalind could respond. That night, Rosalind couldn't sleep. She kept replaying the conversation, the implications. Lady Cordelia suspected something. She couldn't know what, but she was watching too closely, asking too many questions. A soft knock at her door made her jump. She opened it to find the Duke standing in the corridor, still fully dressed despite the late hour. "We need to talk," he said quietly. "May I come in?" Every rule of propriety screamed no, but something in his expression, urgency, maybe fear, made her step aside. He entered, closing the door carefully behind him. "Lady Cordelia asked me some pointed questions tonight after you retired, about my sudden interest in you, about what might have prompted such attention. She said something similar to me earlier. She's fishing, she doesn't know anything, but she suspects there's more to our courtship than appears." He paced, restless energy contained in tight movements. "We need to be more careful. Less time alone together, more chaperones, more conventional behavior. Or," Rosalind said slowly, "we could do the opposite." He stopped. "Explain." "If we pull back now, it confirms her suspicions that something is false. But if we continue as we have been, if we act like two people genuinely falling for each other, then there's no mystery, just a courtship progressing naturally." She met his eyes. "We commit fully to the performance. That's more risk, not less. But it's the risk she won't expect. She's looking for cracks in our story. So we give her a story without cracks." The Duke studied her, and she saw the moment he recognized the logic. "You're suggesting we make this more convincing. I'm suggesting we stop halfway performing. Either we commit to this fiction entirely or we end it now." Silence stretched between them. "And you're comfortable with that?" he asked. "With more intimate deception?" Rosalind thought about Lady Cordelia's calculating eyes, about the rumors that had already damaged her reputation, about the secret she was helping to protect, for reasons she still didn't fully understand. "Are you?" she countered. His answer came as action. He crossed the space between them, cupped her face gently and kissed her, soft and careful and nothing like she'd expected. When he finally stepped away, her lips still tingled from his touch. "There," he said roughly. "Now we know we can sell that part of the performance too, if necessary." That's what that was, research? What else would it be? But his hands were still cradling her face, his thumb tracing her cheekbone with devastating tenderness. "You should go," Rosalind whispered. "Before someone sees you here." "Yes, I should." He didn't move. "Your Grace, Gabriel, if we're doing this, you should call me Gabriel when we're alone. We shouldn't be alone." "No, we shouldn't." He kissed her again, deeper this time, and Rosalind felt her carefully constructed defenses begin to crack. This wasn't pretend. This couldn't be pretend, not when her heart hammered like this, not when she wanted to pull him closer instead of pushing him away. He broke contact first, stepping back with visible effort. "Tomorrow," he said, "we continue." More convincingly. "More convincingly," she echoed. After he left, Rosalind stood in her empty room, fingers pressed to lips still tingling from his touch. She'd agreed to a fake courtship, a performance with clear boundaries and definite end. But standing there in the dark, she realized with dawning horror that sometime in the past week, the performance had become terrifyingly real. At least for her. The next few days were exquisite torture. Gabriel, she couldn't think of him as the Duke anymore after he'd kissed her, played his part with devastating skill. Touches that lingered, glances that burned, moments of intimacy that blurred every line they'd drawn. During a garden party, he brought her lemonade without being asked. At dinner, he defended her opinion about Gothic literature against Lord Hartwick's dismissive comments. During dancing, he held her closer than strictly proper, and she let him. "You're very good at this," she murmured during a waltz. "So are you." His breath ghosted past her ear, "Almost as though you're not acting at all." "Almost," she agreed, her heart stuttering. The worst part was the private moments, the rides where they talked about everything, his frustrations with parliamentary duties, her dreams of travelling, their shared love of philosophy. The chess games where competition gave way to genuine enjoyment. The late evening conversations in the library, always carefully chaperoned but intimate nonetheless. "Tell me about Thomas," she asked one night. "What's he like?" Gabriel smiled, a real smile, soft and unguarded. "Clever, funnier than me. He wanted to be a doctor, actually. Works with physicians overseas, trying to improve conditions for the poor. He's everything I would have been if I hadn't been born to this. You admire him. I love him. He's my brother, but yes, I admire him too. He chose his own path despite circumstances that could have made him bitter. Instead, he finds ways to help people." He looked at her. "You'd like him, I think. He has your same disregard for social hierarchies." "Disregard? I prefer healthy skepticism." "Semantics. Important semantics." They smiled at each other, and Rosalind felt her chest tighten with something dangerously close to affection. This couldn't continue. She was falling for a man who was only pretending to care for her, a man who'd probably drop her the moment their agreement ended, a man who— "What are you thinking?" Gabriel asked softly. "That we're very good at lying." "Yes, we are." But neither of them looked away. 10 days into the house party, disaster struck. Rosalind was walking through the Manor's portrait gallery when she heard raised voices from a nearby study. One belonged to Gabriel, the other she didn't recognize. "Ridiculous to maintain this charade any longer," the unknown voice said. "You're not actually courting the girl, you're investigating her. There's a difference." Her blood turned to ice. "Keep your voice down," Gabriel said sharply. "Why? No one's here. And you need to hear this. You're letting this pretense go too far. You're spending more time with Lady Rosalind than necessary for simple observation. People are starting to assume the courtship is genuine. That's the point." "Is it? Or have you forgotten why you invited her here in the first place? Silence. I haven't forgotten, Gabriel said finally. But the situation has evolved. Into what? Are you actually developing feelings for the woman who potentially holds your entire future in her hands? Because that would be monumentally stupid, even for you. Rosalind should have left, should have walked away before hearing more. But she was frozen, hand pressed to her mouth. My feelings are irrelevant, Gabriel said coldly. The arrangement stands 2 weeks, then she ends the courtship publicly, and we go our separate ways. And you believe she'll do that? After you've spent days making her believe you care? She knows it's performance, we both do. The unknown voice laughed bitterly. Keep telling yourself that, cousin, but I've watched you both. One of you has forgotten your acting, and I'm not entirely sure which one. Footsteps approached the door. Rosalind fled before they could discover her, her heart hammering so hard she thought it might crack her ribs. She made it to her room before the tears came, hot and furious and stupid. Of course it wasn't real. She'd known that from the beginning. The entire courtship was transaction, her silence for his social protection of her reputation. They'd agreed on terms, set boundaries, established an end date, but somewhere along the way, she'd forgotten to protect her heart. And now she'd pay for that mistake. A knock at her door interrupted her spiral. Rosalind? Gabriel's voice concerned. I saw you in the corridor. You looked upset. May I? Go away. Silence. Then, what happened? Nothing. I'm fine. Please leave. I'm not leaving until you tell me what's wrong. She yanked open the door, not caring that her eyes were red. What's wrong? What's wrong is that I forgot this was pretend. I forgot that you're only playing a part because I'm a threat to your precious secret. I forgot that in 2 days, this ends and you go back to distrusting me while I go back to being the difficult woman no one wants. He stared at her, something complicated crossing his features. Rosalind, don't say anything kind or comforting, because it's not real, is it? None of it is real. You were right from the beginning, I'm just too stupid to remember that. She started to close the door. Congratulations, Your Grace, you win. I believe the performance. You can stop worrying about me now. His hand caught the door. You think I've been pretending, haven't you? I don't know anymore. The admission hung between them, raw and shocking. I was pretending, Gabriel said roughly. In the beginning, absolutely. But these rides, these conversations, these moments where I find myself thinking about what you'd say about something I've read or seen, that's not performance. That's not strategy, that's... Don't, Rosalind whispered. Please don't say things you don't mean just because you feel guilty. I'm not, heaven knows I'm not. He stepped into her room fully, closing the door behind him. Propriety be damned. You terrify me, Rosalind. Not because you know my secret. Because somewhere along the way I stopped seeing you as a threat and started seeing you as someone I could actually... A scream echoed through the manor. They froze, then both rushed into the corridor where chaos had erupted. Guests milled about, voices raised in confusion. Lady Cordelia stood at the center of it all, holding something in her hand. A piece of paper. No, not just paper. A fragment of letter. Rosalind's heart stopped. I found this in His Grace's study, Lady Cordelia announced. Fallen behind a desk, and I think everyone should know what it says. Gabriel had gone white. Rosalind recognized the handwriting instantly. Thomas's elegant script, torn from some other correspondence. Lady Cordelia began to read. Worry about maintaining our secret. That's private correspondence, Gabriel said, voice like steel. You had no right. Private correspondence about a secret. How fascinating. Lady Cordelia's eyes glittered with malicious triumph. I wonder what secret the Duke of Blackwell guards so carefully. What could be so damaging that he'd go to such lengths to hide it? Rosalind's mind raced. She had seconds to act, seconds to decide. She could let this play out. Let Gabriel face the consequences he'd always feared. Walk away from this entire situation with her conscience clear. She'd tried to protect him, and he'd never fully trusted her anyway. Or she could do something monumentally stupid. Oh, for heaven's sake, Rosalind said loudly, injecting boredom into her voice. Is that what this dramatic scene is about? Really, Lady Cordelia, you must try harder. Everyone turned to stare at her. I beg your pardon, Lady Cordelia said icily. The secret correspondence, the hidden letters, it's not nearly as scandalous as you're imagining. Rosalind moved through the crowd to Gabriel's side, taking his arm with casual possessiveness. The secret is that His Grace has been corresponding with my brother Edmund about a surprise he's been planning. For me. Shocked silence. Your brother? Someone asked. Yes, Edmund is studying architecture abroad, something Gabriel and I have discussed at length during our courtship. He's been commissioning a series of architectural sketches as a gift, and the secrecy was to preserve the surprise. Honestly, if you're going to snoop through private papers, at least try to understand context. Lady Cordelia's face flushed. That's absurd. Why would a man court a woman by discovering her interests and arranging thoughtful gestures? Rosalind raised an eyebrow. I realize that might be a foreign concept to you, Lady Cordelia, but some people actually value genuine connection. Murmurs rippled through the assembled guests. The explanation was plausible, romantic even, and Rosalind had delivered it with just enough condescension to make Lady Cordelia look foolish for making such a dramatic scene. I don't believe you, Lady Cordelia said, but her voice had lost its certainty. Believe what you like. Rosalind plucked the paper fragment from her fingers, but spreading rumors about private correspondence is rather gauche, don't you think? Now, if you'll excuse us, His Grace and I have matters to discuss. She turned, pulling Gabriel with her, and walked away with her head high. They made it to the library before her knees started to shake. Rosalind, Gabriel began. Don't. Not yet. She locked the door, then turned to face him. That fragment. Where's the rest of the letter? Destroyed. Burned. I thought I'd been thorough, but I must have missed... He stopped, staring at her. You just lied for me. Publicly. Convincingly. Yes. Why? Because I told you I'd protect your secret. And I keep my word. She crossed to him, pressing the paper fragment into his hand. Burn this now. And check every inch of your study for anything else that might have fallen. He looked down at the paper, then back at her. You saved me. I protected information that wasn't mine to share. No. He caught her hand. You saved me. When you could have let it all fall apart. When you had every reason to walk away after overhearing my conversation with Julian. Yes, I realized you must have heard something to react as you did. But you didn't walk away. You stepped forward. Rosalind's eyes burned. I heard your cousin ask if you were developing real feelings. I heard you say the arrangement stands, that we both know its performance. I lied to Julian. Why? Because admitting the truth to him meant admitting it to myself. Gabriel pulled her closer, his free hand coming up to cradle her face. And I wasn't ready to admit that this stopped being pretend for me the moment you returned my package unopened, that every conversation since has been me trying to find excuses to be near you, that I trust you more than anyone I've known in years, and I have no idea when that happened. Gabriel, I know the agreement. I know you're supposed to end this in 2 days. And if that's what you want, I'll honor it. But I need you to know, this isn't performance anymore, not for me. Rosalind's heart hammered against her ribs. You're sure? Because I won't let myself believe this if you're going to change your mind once the house party ends and reality sets back in. I've never been more certain of anything. He kissed her softly. You're brilliant and brave, and you challenge me in ways I didn't know I needed, and I don't want to pretend anymore. Then we stop pretending. She kissed him back, pouring everything she'd been feeling into it. But we need to be smart about this. Lady Cordelia may have backed down, but she's not going to forget, and my explanation about Edmund and architectural sketches won't hold up under scrutiny. Then what do you suggest? We make the courtship real, not performance. Actual courtship with genuine intent. She looked up at him. And we deal with the consequences together. You'd be tied to me, to my secret. For the rest of your life if this leads where I hope it leads. I know. You'd have to carry that weight, never tell anyone. Live with the knowledge that my entire position rests on silence. Gabriel. She touched his face gently. I've been carrying it for 2 weeks already. I'm not afraid of the weight, I'm only afraid of carrying it alone. Something in his expression cracked open, relief and wonder and desperate hope. "I don't deserve you," he said roughly. "Probably not. But you're stuck with me anyway." He laughed, the sound breaking through the tension, and kissed her again with a thoroughness that made her forget about Lady Cordelia and secrets and everything except the feeling of being chosen, finally, by someone who saw all of her and wanted her anyway. When the kiss ended, he pressed his forehead to hers, savoring the closeness. "So we're doing this," he said. "Actually doing this. Unless you're having second thoughts. My only thought is how soon I can speak to your father about formal courtship. Eager, Your Grace. Terrified you'll change your mind." Rosalind smiled against his mouth. Not a chance. But even as they stood there, wrapped in each other, she couldn't shake the feeling that Lady Cordelia wasn't finished. And she was right. The next morning, Rosalind woke to find a note slipped under her door. Not from Gabriel. The handwriting was different, feminine and sharp. "I know you're lying about the architectural sketches. Meet me in the East Garden at noon if you want to avoid public exposure. Come alone." See, Rosalind's blood ran cold. She should tell Gabriel immediately. Should bring him to this meeting, let him handle it. But something stopped her. Pride, maybe. Or the desire to prove she could protect him without his intervention. Or perhaps simply the stubborn determination that had defined her entire life. The refusal to let anyone make her feel small or powerless. She went to the East Garden alone. Lady Cordelia waited by the fountain, elegant and dangerous. "You came. You threatened exposure. Of course I came." Rosalind kept her voice level. "What do you want?" "The truth. That letter fragment mentioned a secret and a brother. Your explanation about architectural sketches was clever, but it doesn't explain the brother reference. You and His Grace both are only children." Lady Cordelia smiled coldly. "So tell me, what is the Duke of Blackwell really hiding?" "Nothing that concerns you. Everything about a duke concerns society, especially secrets important enough to warrant late-night visits to each other's bedchambers. Yes, I saw him leave your room 2 nights ago. Very improper. Almost as though you were discussing something urgent." Her eyes glittered. "Tell me what I want to know, or I'll make sure everyone knows about those midnight meetings. Your reputation will be destroyed, and his courtship of you will look like desperate damage control." Rosalind's mind raced. She could lie again, but Lady Cordelia would see through it. Could threaten, but with what? Lady Cordelia held the social power here. "Unless you're having an affair," Rosalind said quietly. "With Lord Hartwig. I noticed the way you watch him when you think no one's looking. The way you both disappear at similar times during evening entertainment. The way his wife has been suspiciously absent from most gatherings this season." Lady Cordelia went pale. "You have no proof." "I saw you together. 3 nights ago, in the portrait gallery. Very passionate. Very married. Him, not you, but that's almost worse, isn't it? A respectable widow maintaining propriety while secretly carrying on with a married man." Rosalind stepped closer. "So here's what's going to happen. You're going to drop this investigation into His Grace's private affairs. You're going to stop spreading insinuations. And in return, I'll forget what I saw in the portrait gallery." "You're bluffing." "Am I? Shall we test that theory? I'm happy to stand in front of every guest here and describe exactly what I witnessed. The position you were in was quite memorable." Fury and fear warred across Lady Cordelia's features. "You little..." "Careful." Rosalind's voice was pure steel. "I've been underestimated and dismissed my entire life. But I notice everything, Lady Cordelia. Every whisper, every glance, every careful arrangement. And I have absolutely no compunction about using that information to protect the people I care about." Long silence. "You're more dangerous than you look," Lady Cordelia said finally. "Good. Remember that. Fine. I'll back off. But if your precious Duke ever missteps, if this secret, whatever it is, comes to light through any other means, don't expect mercy from me." Duly noted. Rosalind turned to leave, then paused. "One more thing. End your affair with Lord Hartwig. His wife doesn't deserve to be humiliated, and you're better than settling for scraps of another woman's marriage." She left before Lady Cordelia could respond, her heart racing but her hands steady. She'd done it. neutralized the threat, protected Gabriel's secret without his help. But as she walked back toward the manor, she wondered if she should feel more triumphant. Instead, she just felt tired, and aware that this wouldn't be the last time she'd have to guard this secret. This was the cost of loving someone with everything to lose, and she was paying it willingly. She found Gabriel in his study, looking over correspondence. He glanced up as she entered, his expression brightening. "There you are. I've been looking." He stopped, studying her face. "What happened?" "Lady Cordelia happened." Rosalind closed the door and told him everything. The note, the meeting, the threat, and her counter-threat. Gabriel listened without interrupting, his expression growing progressively darker. "You confronted her alone," he said when she finished. "You put yourself at risk. I protected your secret. At what cost? If she'd called your bluff—" "I wasn't bluffing. I did see her with Lord Hartwick." Rosalind moved to him, placing her hands on his chest. "Gabriel, this is what it means to be with you, to know what you're carrying. I'll have to make these choices, take these risks, guard this information for the rest of our lives if we continue. And I'm telling you right now, I can do it. I will do it. But you need to trust that I know what I'm getting into." He pulled her close, burying his face in her hair. "You shouldn't have to fight my battles. We fight them together. That's what partnership means." They stood like that for a long moment, holding each other in the quiet study. "I'm going to speak to your father today," Gabriel said finally. "Formally request permission to court you with intent, no more pretense, no more performance. Just the truth, that I want to marry you, if you'll have me." Rosalind's breath caught. "That's very sudden, is it? We've spent 2 weeks learning each other. I know you prefer philosophy to poetry. I know you're terrible at embroidery, but brilliant at chess. I know you ride like you're escaping something, and you laugh like your surprised joy still exists. I know you're loyal and fierce, and you protect people even when they don't deserve it." He pulled back to look at her. "What else do I need to know before asking you to spend your life with me? That I snore when I'm tired, that I'm moody in the mornings, that I'll argue with you about everything because I can't help myself. Good, I'd be bored otherwise. Gabriel." "Rosalind, marry me. Not today, not tomorrow, but eventually. Tell me you'll consider it." She looked at him. This man who'd started as an adversary, become an unwilling partner, transformed into someone she couldn't imagine living without. "Yes," she said, "I'll consider it. But you need to actually court me properly first. My father will insist on that. Then I'll court you so thoroughly that you'll be sick of my attention." "Not possible." He kissed her, slow and deep and full of promise. Neither of them heard the door open. "Well," said an amused voice, "this is certainly interesting." They broke apart to find a stranger in the doorway, dark-haired, green-eyed, with Gabriel's bone structure, but warmer, more open somehow. Gabriel's face transformed. "Thomas?" "Surprise, brother." Thomas grinned. "Thought I'd visit sooner than planned." "Hope that's all right. You're here. You're actually here." Gabriel crossed the room and embraced him, and Rosalind saw the love between them, uncomplicated and deep, and everything she'd read about in that first letter. Thomas looked over Gabriel's shoulder at Rosalind, his eyebrows rising. "And you must be the reason my brother's letters have been so interesting lately. Lady Rosalind Fairmont, I presume." "How did you—" "He wrote about you. Extensively, with much hand-wringing about trust and danger and entirely too much emotional constipation." Thomas pulled back from Gabriel, keeping one hand on his shoulder. "So I decided to come see what kind of woman could make my stoic brother lose his legendary composure." "Thomas," Gabriel said warningly. "What? I'm being complimentary." Thomas smiled at Rosalind. "He said you accidentally read my letter and then protected his secret anyway. That's quite extraordinary, Lady Rosalind. Most people would have used that information." "Most people aren't worth trusting," Rosalind said. "Your brother taught me that." "Interesting. He wrote that you taught him to trust again." Thomas looked between them. "So which is it?" "Both," Gabriel and Rosalind said simultaneously. Thomas laughed delightedly. "Oh, I like her. She's perfect for you, sharp enough to keep you honest, brave enough to tolerate your darkness. Please tell me you're planning to marry her before she realizes she can do better." "That's the plan." Excellent. Thomas sobered slightly. Though I should warn you, my arrival might complicate things. I'm supposed to be the distant cousin again, but if anyone recognizes me from my last visit, or puts together the timing, we'll handle it, Rosalind said firmly. Together. Both brothers looked at her. We? Thomas asked softly. We. I'm part of this now. Part of protecting what matters. She moved to Gabriel's side. Your brother is important to him, which makes you important to me. So yes, we figure this out together. Thomas's expression softened. You really are perfect for him. She is, Gabriel agreed, pulling her close, even if I don't deserve her. Especially because you don't deserve her. Thomas winked at Rosalind. Keep him humble. It's good for his soul. The next few days were delicate choreography. Thomas played his role as distant cousin Adrian Ashford flawlessly, charming the guests while carefully maintaining appropriate distance from Gabriel in public. But in private moments, walks in the garden, late dinners after other guests retired, the three of them built something unexpected. Friendship, family. Rosalind found herself genuinely enjoying Thomas's company. He was everything Gabriel had described. Witty, warm, passionate about his medical work overseas, and he clearly adored his brother, asking careful questions about Gabriel's life, his struggles, his rare moments of happiness. He's been alone too long, Thomas told her one evening when Gabriel stepped away to handle a household matter. I've worried about him for years, the weight of maintaining this secret, of never being able to fully trust anyone. It's been destroying him slowly. Not anymore, Rosalind said. No, not anymore. Thomas studied her. You love him. It wasn't a question. I do. And you're prepared for what that means. A lifetime of guarding this secret, of carefully managing my visits, of always being vigilant about what you say and who might overhear. Yes, that's a heavy burden, Lady Rosalind. I know. But love isn't about choosing the easy path. It's about choosing someone and deciding their happiness matters more than your comfort. She met his eyes. Your brother is worth every difficult moment. And so, I think, are you. Thomas blinked rapidly. You're going to make me cry, and that will ruin my carefully cultivated rakish persona. Heaven forbid. They smiled at each other, a moment of understanding between two people bound by love for the same man, if in different ways. That night, Gabriel came to Rosalind's room again, properly chaperoned this time by her maid's presence in the sitting area, but intimate nonetheless. Thomas leaves tomorrow, he said quietly. He's been here 4 days, and already I dread watching him go. How long before you can see him again? A year, perhaps longer. It's safer if we space the visits out, make them less predictable. He took her hand. But there will be visits, regular ones, and when we're married, you'll be part of them, properly, fully. No more pretending he's distant family, at least not when we're alone together. I'd like that. He adores you, you know. Told me I'd be a fool to let you slip away. Smart man, your brother. Smarter than me in many ways. Gabriel pulled her closer, his voice dropping. I spoke to your father today, formally. He's given permission for proper courtship. And he asked if I was prepared to handle a woman of your spirit and intelligence. I told him I was terrified but willing to try. His thumb traced circles on her palm. Your mother is already planning the wedding, I think. She kept asking about my preferences for flowers and music. Rosalind laughed. That sounds like Mother. Is this moving too fast for you? If you need more time, I've spent my whole life waiting for someone to truly see me. Now that I've found that person, why would I want to slow down? He kissed her then, soft and thorough, and Rosalind felt the last of her defenses crumble entirely. She was his, he was hers. Everything else was just details. The house party ended 3 days later, with most guests departing in good spirits. Lady Cordelia left early, her expression sour, and Rosalind felt a grim satisfaction in that. On the final evening, after the last guests had gone, Gabriel took Rosalind to his study. I have something for you. He retrieved a small leather journal from his desk. Thomas left this. He said you should have it. Rosalind opened it carefully. Inside, Thomas's handwriting covered page after page, but not letters. Instructions. Medical knowledge, carefully documented. He wanted you to have his notes on treating common ailments. Gabriel explained. "He said if you're going to be family, you should have something that represents what he does, his real work, his real passion." Tears pricked her eyes. I don't know what to say. He doesn't do this lightly, doesn't share his work easily. But he trusts you, and that," Gabriel's voice roughened, "that means everything to me. I'll treasure this, and I'll learn it. Everything in here." "He thought you might," Gabriel pulled her close. "So it's official now. You're not just courting me, you're officially part of this family, with all its complications and secrets. Best decision I ever made. Even though I suspected you of blackmail, even though you were completely insufferable about it." He laughed against her hair, and Rosalind felt complete in a way she never had before. This was home, not the manor, not the title, not the social position. This man who'd learned to trust her, this secret she chose to carry, this love that had grown from suspicion into something unshakable. 3 months later, the engagement was formally announced. Rosalind's mother wept with joy. Her father looked satisfied in that quiet way parents do when they know their child has chosen well. Society buzzed with speculation about the Duke of Blackwell finally selecting a bride, and such an unexpected one at that. "They're calling you the woman who tamed the untamable Duke," Gabriel informed her one morning over breakfast in his London townhouse. "How dramatic." "They're not wrong, though. You did tame me." "I did nothing of the sort. You were never untamed, just lonely and scared." She reached across the table for his hand. "I simply helped you remember that trust is possible. You make it sound simple. It is simple. Not easy, but simple." He brought her hand to his lips. "I don't tell you enough how grateful I am. For you. For your courage that day in the postal office. For every choice you made after that. You don't have to thank me for loving you. Perhaps not, but I will anyway. The wedding was small by ducal standards. Family and close friends only. Rosalind wore cream silk and carried roses from Ashford Manor's gardens. Gabriel looked at her throughout the ceremony as though she were something miraculous. And when the vicar pronounced them husband and wife, when Gabriel kissed her in front of everyone they cared about, Rosalind felt the final piece of her life click into place. She'd spent so long being underestimated, so long being dismissed and manipulated, and told she was too much, too opinionated, too intelligent, too difficult. But Gabriel saw all of that, and loved her not despite it, but because of it. And she'd fight forever to protect what they'd built, this fragile, beautiful, impossible love. 8 months after their wedding, they travelled. "Where are we going?" Rosalind asked, as their carriage rolled through increasingly rural countryside. "You'll see." They'd been travelling for 2 days, longer than any normal social visit required, and Gabriel had been mysteriously quiet about their destination, only smiling whenever she asked questions. Finally, they arrived at a small estate near the coast, beautiful but modest, nothing like Ashford Manor's grandeur. A man waited on the steps, dark hair, green eyes. Thomas. "Welcome," he called as they descended. "I've been waiting for you both." Rosalind's heart swelled. Gabriel had arranged this, a proper visit with his brother, no pretense required, no distant cousin fiction. Just family. "You knew?" she asked Gabriel softly. "I wanted you to meet him properly, not as a house party obligation, but as my brother." He squeezed her hand. "I wanted him to know you as my wife." Thomas embraced them both, his smile brilliant. "Come in. I want to hear everything. And Rosalind, thank you for those letters you've been sending. Your questions about medical procedures have been fascinating." "You're corresponding?" Gabriel asked, surprised. "Of course. Thomas offered to continue my education, and I'm not fool enough to turn down knowledge from someone who actually helps people." Rosalind grinned at his expression. "You didn't think I'd ignore that journal he gave me, did you?" "I'm surrounded by brilliant people who make me feel inadequate," Gabriel said, but his eyes were warm. They spent 3 days together, talking, laughing, sharing stories. Thomas told them about his work overseas, the challenges and triumphs. Gabriel relaxed in ways Rosalind had never seen. The weight of secrecy temporarily lifted. On their final evening, Thomas pulled Rosalind aside. "I need to thank you," he said quietly, "for keeping him safe, for giving him something I never could, a partner in all this. You gave him love, that's everything. Yes, but you gave him hope, And that's perhaps even more valuable, Thomas smiled. Take care of him, and let him take care of you. He needs to feel useful. I will, on both counts. That night, lying in bed with Gabriel in the guest room of Thomas's small estate, Rosalind felt peace settle into her bones. Happy? Gabriel murmured against her hair. Deliriously. Even though your life is complicated now. Even though you're tied to my secrets. Especially because of that. She turned to face him. We're building something, Gabriel. Not just a marriage, but a family. A real one with all its complications and imperfections. And I wouldn't trade that for anything. I love you. I know, I love you too. They fell asleep like that, tangled together, and Rosalind dreamed of futures where love mattered more than scandal, where trust was hard-earned but unshakable, where secrets weren't weapons but simply pieces of people worth protecting, where opening the wrong package could lead to exactly the right place. Thank you for staying until the end of Gabriel and Rosalind's story. These two people found each other through suspicion and circumstance, but built something real from pretense, a reminder that trust is a choice we make over and over, even when it terrifies us. If you enjoyed watching them learn to be vulnerable with each other, I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments. And don't forget to subscribe for more stories about people who find love in the most unexpected